The group posted a video of a woman and made an offer to release foreign hostages. A senior Hamas official then told NBC News the group is willing to release all civilians and dual nationals with a condition.
We are ready to release all the civilians, including the foreigners.
All of the civilians, including the Israeli civilians?
Yes, including the Israeli.
I'm sorry. Can I just clarify this? You say you're willing to release all of the civilians, including the Israeli nationals, if there is a stopping?
Yes, including the Israeli civilians and all the foreigners.
And what are you asking for in order to do that? Do you want the airstrikes to stop? Is that the condition?
To stop the aggression. How can we, technically, logistically, it is impossible to do it.
So that our viewers might hear that and say that this offer doesn't mean anything. That if you're not willing to carry it out, then it doesn't mean anything.
How? Well, if you stop the aggression, it can be implemented over the next hour.
Or you could just release all the hostages, like, right now.
Oh, okay. I guess we're doing foreign policy by Play School Dollhouse now. Just keep screaming into the void, I guess, and eventually they'll listen. Hi, it's Earth. That's not how shit works. These totally unserious people playing dress up, acting like you just get to pick who your opponent is and decide what they're gonna accept for the negotiations. He then goes on to describe, again, just like horrifying, gut-wrenching, barbaric details of what happened to innocent Israeli civilians on October 7th. There is a specific purpose in that. It's not that knowing those details and knowing what happened doesn't matter. It does. But he specifically only shows you the horrifying details and images of what happened to the Israeli people while purposefully refusing to show you any of the photos or videos of the victims in Gaza. And that is done so that you humanize some and dehumanize others. They don't show you because they don't want you to look at the Palestinian people with sympathy. And then goes on to just demonize all Muslims in general and talk again about how multiculturalism is bad.
But again, this is what happens when you indoctrinate people into the belief system of multiculturalism. All cultures are equal. All cultures are equivalent. Now, again, this has wages and effects into the West. When you import hundreds of thousands of people who believe this sort of stuff, things tend to get pretty ugly.
A lot of quick talk and bigotry there. So he says importing all these people that think like that. So he's smearing all Muslims. All Muslims. There's a lot of Muslims in the world, and he's smearing all of them, saying that anybody who comes to the West who is Muslim, they don't share our value because multiculturalism is a failure, and we've been indoctrinated into thinking that it's good. To be exposed to other cultures is not indoctrination. To meet people from other cultures and other backgrounds and see the things that you have in common with those people simply humanizes them. It does not indoctrinate you into anything. The indoctrination is coming from people like that. The indoctrination is coming from the propaganda that's coming out of the IDF and the Israeli government. He is mad that not only are some people saying, hey, why don't we not make the same mistakes that we did after 9/11? Because he thinks that the apartheid government of Israel should be able to do whatever they want to the Palestinians. And he's angry that there are Americans that don't support that. He's angry that there was polling that came out that said a lot of young people and Muslim and Arab Americans do not support that. So because they have a different perspective, probably because of their own lived experiences, he's like, this is what happens when you import people into your society. And keeps parroting the same stupid shit that the Israeli government is saying. We just gotta wipe out Hamas. How? How are you gonna do that without wiping out a ton of civilians? Why do you think that just getting rid of Hamas, the group, is going to solve the problem? Because someone will come in their place. That's the reality. Even if they are wiped out, it'll be like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Someone else will rise from their ashes. I mean, Israel's like really nice. They like send text messages before they like bomb a house. Oh, how nice of you. You send a text message before you reduce someone's home to rubble. They have nowhere to go after their house is destroyed. You absurdly stated that 1 million Palestinians need to evacuate within 24 hours. As if that is at all feasible. It's absurd on its face. But you want cookies for it. You want to be called a hero for it. I mean, yeah, well, like, Israel gave back Gaza and didn't want anything to do with it, okay? They abandoned it a long time ago. First of all, why are you trying to be heroes about giving back something that isn't yours. It wasn't yours to give. And it's horseshit anyhow, because even when you gave it back, you put a blockade on it. So they couldn't get anything. And the blockade's been on there for years. Right, the blockade was on there because you said that it wouldn't be taken off until they got rid of Hamas as their leading government. You're not allowed to tell people who their government should be, even if they're awful. We don't tell Saudi Arabia that they need to get rid of MBS. But then again, you guys are the people that cheered the faux ball president Juan Guaido when you were trying to do a coup against Maduro that failed. Listen, I know that was us. The US has a long history of installing puppet dictators that are favorable to us, specifically our corporations. But then don't cry about hostility, because one of the reasons why these people are hostile toward the US, or in this case to Israel's government, is because you try to force governments on them, you try to force leaders on them, and if they don't like the leader you're trying to force, you put sanctions on them and bleed out their economy, or a blockade to make it so that they can't get anything. This shit is the oldest trick in the book. And we Americans, we know what you're doing over there, okay? We know. Because again, we have a lot of experience with this. We did it to Venezuela. We did it to Iran. We did it to Cuba. Long history doing this type of shit. This is the deep level of analysis that we're dealing with. That's not how negotiations work. I'm gonna fucking lose it if I hear one more person say, you can't negotiate with terrorists. You don't just get to negotiate with your friends, bro. You have to negotiate with your enemies. I despise this immature, childlike view that so many hold in the United States, that you can only negotiate with your friends, you can't negotiate with terrorists. And it is because of this stupid childlike view that relations with Cuba have not been normalized for years and years. That we can't negotiate with Iran. Because if you negotiate with Iran, which was successfully done during Obama's administration, but as soon as Trump got in power, he scrapped the deal. Now we can't negotiate with Venezuela. Because, of course, he's the dictator and blah, 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 blah. Now it's good that the US is finally starting to negotiate with Venezuela. You won't be surprised to know that all the usual suspects are crying about it. We can't negotiate with them, they're dictator. Yeah? So is Saudi Arabia. And they're our fucking allies. Foreign policy is not about your besties. When these people say that you can't negotiate with terrorists, they're full of shit. Because the US excuses Saudi Arabia's human rights abuses all the time. I know we all like to have the memory of a goldfish, but it wasn't that long ago that the US backed immunity for Saudi's leader in the lawsuit over the Khashoggi murder. I'm old enough to remember 5 minutes ago during the 2020 debates when Biden said that Saudi Arabia was going to be made to be a pariah because of what they did to Jamal Khashoggi. Then they remembered this is politics, and Saudi Arabia is the US's ally, so they just kind of, brush it under the rug. And since what the world clearly needs right now is opinions from George W. Bush, he's here saying, one side is guilty and it ain't Israel. Negotiating with killers is not an option, Bush stated, saying Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's job is to protect his country. George W. Bush should not be allowed to talk. He should not be allowed to talk about anything having to do with foreign policy or anything else for that matter. Which is why it's so absurd when Ben Shapiro's like, no one after 9/11 was saying that we need to be careful of civilian casualties and innocent lives. Yeah, that's kind of the problem. You're mad that some people have learned the lessons from 9/11 and the invasions into Iraq and Afghanistan and say, hey, why don't we try not to make those mistakes again? And he's like, how dare you? And the point is, it doesn't matter if you think they're evil or not. You don't get to pick other people's leaders, regardless of how bad they are. So maybe instead of continuing to engage in your childlike fantasies about how all of this should unfold, you should get your big boy pants up and you should start thinking about ways to negotiate with Hamas to get the hostages back.